Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report presented by Angelo, DePaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, the first podcast to bring the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I am your host, Butch Thierry. We have a great show lined up for you guys this week, but first, let's hear who's making the show possible. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Great Days Outdoors. Are you looking for that one-of-a-kind Christmas or birthday gift? If so, head on over to greatdaysoutdoors.com and check out the best gifts for outdoorsmen 2021. We've curated a bunch of unique gift ideas to help you find an awesome gift for the outdoorsman on your list. Just head over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/best gifts for outdoorsmen to check it out. And also Fishing Chaos. Fishing Chaos recently announced the launch of its new club module and a partnership with National Scouting Report to significantly enhance exposure, recruitment, and scholarship awards for high school anglers. NSR announced last month the addition of fishing to their already successful sports recruiting program. Fishing Chaos invites all high school fishing teams to create a free club on the Fishing Chaos platform. Clubs can hold tournaments within the high school team or invite rival clubs to compete in CPR, catch photo, release events, as well as live weigh-in events, as Fishing Chaos supports most any tournament formats. The addition of the new Fishing Chaos Club Management module allows coaches to easily communicate with the team about upcoming events. It automates the tracking of Angler of the Year or Team of the Year standings and collects angler results. Fishing Chaos will play a key role in recruitment by collecting data on tournament finishes. NSR will build angler profiles based on these results and other criteria important to college programs. If you're interested in setting up a free team club or a tournament, please contact Fishing Chaos today at fishingchaos.com or call Jesse Wilson at 256-508-1853. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report. I am your host, Butch Thierry, and I'm joined today by Captain Wesley Hallman as my co-host. How we doing today, Cap?
Doing great, Cap. How you doing?
Doing good, man. What you been up to? You been getting into fishing lately?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of fishing. Fishing's been great. Man, this weather down here in LA has been incredible.
Has been pretty great. I'm looking forward to a cold snap this weekend. Finally got one in the crosshairs.
Yep. We planted our food plots last Friday and Saturday, and it was right on the tip of that, that crisp morning.
It was nice in the mornings, but it got hot in the afternoons. Me and Joe went up to my place, and there's a lot of sweating going on still.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Looking forward to some cool temperatures for sure. Well, what y'all been doing this week? Captain Patric's going to give us the onshore or the inshore report, so y'all can inshore out on that. But just give us a little rundown about what you've been up to.
Man, I've been hanging out pretty much in the lower bay, hanging out at the mouth of the Gulf. There's a ton of life down there. There's a ton of fish down there, all walks of fish too. The redfish.
Really?
Man, we've been.
It's a good thing. Those are fun to pull on.
Yeah, we've been and from slot to bulls, just a constant action with those, and people love that drag pull, man, when those redfish hook up.
Don't call them bulls for nothing.
That's right. And we've been getting to test a lot of guys lately, and Jack Creval's been thick down there, so we've been hooking up on a few of those, and just it's been a wide variety of stuff this past week, and I love that, especially around this transition. And
it gives you plenty of options. You don't have to beat your head against the wall trying to chase something particular.
Yep. And it looks like those reds are really kind of falling in line with the transition, man. They're starting to move back in and moving in schools. I actually saw a school of at least over 1,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's a pretty sight.
Yeah, we were kind of speckled trout fishing where we were, and then man, we just look up and 1,000 bull reds,
water turn red.
Yeah, and they're literally making their way up north like they're supposed to. So it's time.
Good.
Their instincts definitely kicking in. So
yeah,
that's good to see. Hopefully that'll unravel everything that's supposed to happen. I know Captain Bobby mentioned that last week on the show. He was looking forward to the Delta bite. So
yeah. I think it's still lining up to be pretty right. We really haven't had that much more rain since the last time we talked about that, luckily, local or otherwise. So should be getting right.
Oh yeah, man, the weather, you couldn't ask for better weather. And the temperatures, the water temps are maybe a little on the high side, but everything's playing out. So
yeah, it's kind of hard to believe it's already middle of October.
I know, man, it just flies.
Bow hunting season starts Friday.
Antlered only. Yeah.
It's crazy. Mm-hmm. Talking about those redfish, anything in particular they're keying in on?
The main thing that we were using was live croaker. That was just automatic guaranteed. It was so busy, man, with the redfish this past week that there was a couple times where I had to like kind of step in, and especially if I had like a younger angler on the boat, you know, I was like, hey, wait, let's just wait and let him reel this one in,
Yeah.
you know, because it's chaos.
Oh yeah.
You know how it goes. Three different people trying to reel in redfish of that size. And then I always tell them, I'm like, look, kind of take a turn, and that way, you know, versus all three people hook up, then we have a big mess.
Right.
And then
Well,
nobody's
might lose all three of them.
yeah, nobody's fishing
Right.
for 10 minutes,
Right.
you know, and then
Rotate
versus
out.
if you rotate out, everything kind of works a little smoothly. But yeah, and you can't blame them. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It was kind of one of those things where you just throw a live croaker in there and you just better hold on, kind of thing. So it made me look a little better than what I think I am.
That's right. Hey, that's the best kind of trips right there, where you come out the genius.
That's right.
Yep. Well, that's great, man.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about Captain Wesley Hallman. I got a couple of notes over here. I just jotted down some ideas. You run Base Island Fishing Guide Services.
Yep.
You mentioned last time you were on the show, last time you gave the report, that you consider yourself a speckled trout guide. You know, I know Captain Patric Garmeson and Captain Richard, they kind of have their little niches. I would say Patrick likes his deep water, bottom grub bumping. I mean, he's good at pretty much everything, but what would you consider your specialty?
Man, obviously I would love for my specialty to be, you know, satisfying whatever angler I have. Honestly, I don't really have a specific fish that I kind of hone in on. I really like, I mean, like I said from the beginning, I really like the trout fishing, and something that I've really gotten into more of as far as taking customers and doing is the wade fishing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know Richard and Pat, and they love the wade fishing thing, and you know, they've taken clients more than I have, and have been doing it longer. So I'm always kind of picking their brain on that. I've noticed that, man, when you can just get somebody out of the boat and they can catch a, you know, 4-5 pound trout, like, it is way different than.
Oh, it's a whole different experience.
Yes,
my opinion.
You're right there in it. It's like you're in the action.
Right.
You know, like you can watch an action movie in your living room with surround sound, and that's great. But you get off, you know, get out of the boat and get in the water and get in the bait and in the area right where the fish is, you know, and you're kind of, that fish is coming up to you and you're fighting and all that good stuff, man. It's just an awesome adrenaline.
It is,
especially for the customers. And I've definitely done way more wade fishing this year than I have in the past, especially with clients on the boat. And they even mentioned next time, that's what we're doing, Cap. You know,
nice.
Like, that's what I want to do. So, you know, they ask questions, when's the best time to do it? I mean, always like, you know, May and wade fishing, man, they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Especially down here in Mobile and the fishery we have. I think that's a lot of fun because the water's not too cold, you know. But anyways, as far as like a special tack that I like to just hone in on, I honestly, I don't think there's anything that, probably because you know, I've still got some years to get
still
some
working
more
on
experience, but you know, I mean, I want to be humble, man. I'm always ready to learn. Like, there's not you know, I don't put myself above anybody. Like, I love listening to anybody's.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody's
always learning.
Yeah, tips and tricks, and just watching somebody, man. Like, just kind of watching what they do,
mm-hmm.
and you kind of pick up on it. If you're able to pick up on it, you can take that and you can keep using it and grow with it. You know, it's not like they have to go with you other times, and every time, rather. If you can just pick up on what you see, then you can learn. And I mean, shoot, it's okay to ask questions.
Yep. And that's why I'm big on, I know people, you know, I'm really big on take a charter, man.
Yeah.
I mean, how many years will 1 trip, 2 trips a year cut off your learning curve?
Yeah.
Fishing with you guys. I mean, it's a ton.
Oh yeah. And man, just knowing your environment, that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandpa was a shrimper. My dad was a shrimper, and my dad would shrimp every day he could. When he picked me up from school, a lot of times in that, you know, in June, especially when the lower bay opened up or whatever, we would go fishing shrimping after school.
Mm-hmm.
he shrimped everywhere. Like he didn't just go one spot. Like he literally went everywhere he could. And I really learned
a lot of the area.
I learned a lot of the area.
Learned the lay of the land, yeah.
And what's under you, you
Yeah.
know, and where not to go. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, where he didn't want to go shrimping, it's probably where I want to go fishing because there's something there for a reason he didn't drag right
Structure,
there. You know?
yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
Definitely.
And then, man, you know, you asked if I had like a specific fish that I target. And I think, man, more of my specific is knowing, I want to know more of my terrain, what the bottom is, what I'm doing and why I caught that fish.
Yeah.
You know, like I said a couple weeks ago, it is definitely your clients that keep you happy. But for the most part, I think speckled trout fishing, wade fishing, I guess that's more of my favorite.
Yeah, me too. I like wade fishing.
Yeah.
I'd rather catch 5 in the water than 20 in the boat. You know?
Of course.
Yeah, that's something about it.
And usually that's going to happen before the sun even gets all the way
Yeah,
up.
and it's probably on a big top water blow up.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just worth it.
That's when it gets addicting.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's head on offshore and get our first report. Let's go see what Captain King Marchand's doing over at Captain Mike's Deep Sea Fishing on the Lady Ann. All right, Captain King, tell us a fish story, man. I know I've seen you guys had some great overnight trips back to back on the Lady Ann. Welcome back to the show, man. How you been doing?
Been doing good, Butch. Been doing real good.
You guys been living offshore. You've been doing some near shore stuff too. What y'all been going on?
Man, pretty much been living offshore out there in that blue water this week. It like you said, man, we've had a couple of just awesome trips. Just back to back. First trip we caught, I think it was 12 big old yellowfin. And then we went right back out that next day and we caught 15 of them. Finally, I said, guys,
Wow.
this is enough yellowfin. We got to go fish for something else.
That's a lot of sashimi.
Yeah, but it wasn't a bad problem to have. I'll tell you that.
What's the water quality look like out there? How far was it before you guys ran into that good cobalt stuff?
Probably, I'd say 15 miles. That water got pretty blue,
Wow.
and then it got green, and then at about 50 miles or so, it got pretty blue again. And all up there, in that ghetto area and all south of there, it's just been good, pretty blue water. Very fishy, man. One thing I've noticed, everywhere we've been going, there's been birds everywhere. There's been, schools of blackfin and skipjack jumping everywhere. It's just been a fishy situation out there, for sure.
That's awesome. How'd you guys catch those yellowfin? Were you primarily trolling? Did you get the kite up? Did y'all chunk them? What'd y'all have going on?
There was no other way to catch them yellowfin other than to put in long days of hard work, man. They wasn't jumping on the hook by no means, but we caught some trolling. We caught a few of them chunking. We caught some with throwing out bat live baits and doing like that. I mean, we just get one here and one there, and by the end of the trip, it turned out to be a good trip. But we hooked a stud, dude. I'm talking about 160, 170 pounder. Fought him for a damn near 2 hours, almost about an hour and a half, and he finally just came off the hook. But
it's heartbreaking.
We actually hooked that fish on a bait that was not traditionally what we usually use. We were sitting there chunking, and we always keep a couple of live baits down there, down deep, probably 200 foot or so. And I noticed some squid swimming around on the surface. And so my deckhand Trey, he said, "Hey, King," he said, "let's put a squid down there." So he sent one down. It wasn't 5 minutes later, that line, it just went off. That fish dove down probably 500 foot, came up, ran up to the surface, and started long lining like a marlin. And then we fought him. It was just a long battle.
Match the hatch.
It was cool to see the bait that was around and then put that bait down and hook one. But it broke my heart, man. It didn't come together. It just wasn't his time.
That's right. He lives to fight another day.
That's fishing.
That is fishing. That's a fact. Yeah, like Wesley said, match the hatch.
Yeah.
Heck, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then also we hooked a couple more by just putting some old chunks of blackfin down there. They weren't biting the chunks while we were chunking, but for some reason when we sent one down real deep, it got hit every single time. And we ran into some bad luck, man. We broke a couple hooks off. We had a couple big fish pull off. I mean, we had plenty of fish, but I guess I wanted to catch them worse than my people did. So I just had to try to get a few more. But, man, it was just good fishing out there.
That's awesome, man. So you talk about, yeah, I've also done that before and had good success. like you say, chunking's kind of a grind, but if you keep a couple little croakers, or I've also done the chunking thing down, down deep with a weight. What's your setup look like there? Are you running a swivel and a leader, or how are you doing that? Knocker rig type deal?
No, I would do a knocker rig, but the problem with that is that you'd have to wire the fish up because you have to put it above the swivel. We use a leader, as long as you can get it. I try to use a 30, 40-foot fluorocarbon leader, and we use a little tiny wind-on swivel on it. What we do here on the Lady Inn, we take a piece of like 10-pound mono and we tie a loop into it, just make it into a loop, and then we connect our lead to the actual swivel that way. That way, when you hook a fish and he takes off, he'll just break the lead off, and you don't have to wire the fish. You don't even have to worry about the lead anymore. And that way, when you get it up there at the swivel, that way it's way away from your bait so those fish don't see it, because they're a lot smarter than people think they are.
No doubt, man. That's a great tip in the report itself. I like that setup. It makes a lot of sense. I've done it before. The knocker rig setup, a super long leader or a wind on, 40 or 50 foot, and then use a toothpick. Use a toothpick to keep the lead up where you want it. But sometimes that ended in disaster. You're right. So I like your setup a little bit better.
Yeah, it seems like when we use the toothpick, it's just always a pain, man.
It always gets messed up somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, then it slides down the line, and then your lead flat full of toothpicks, and you got to drill it out at the end of the trip and all that. But man, I'll tell you another technique that we had used. We actually used putting them baits down deep, like we were just talking about. We put one out and we'd send it out on a balloon, as a court. And we was able to stretch 5 down deep baits out there and make a slow drift all the way across the rig or the drill ship or whatever we were fishing at the time. And we caught several good fish like that just because they were biting deep ones. I said, heck, let's get more of them down there.
That's right. Let's put them all down there.
Yeah.
Definitely makes sense to me. Well, what about live bait, man? You guys find somewhere, between the island and the ghetto to catch those baits, or what's the live bait situation look like in the Gulf?
Man, pretty much everywhere I've been, it's been loaded down. There's been a lot of bait. I've seen a lot of those baby hardtails, like them little 2-inch hardtails have been in. A lot of cigar minnows and sardines and threadfin herring. Really anywhere we went, it's been a good live bait. I usually normally go over there to the east a little bit, east of the island, and fish some rigs over there on my way out. But we haven't had to lately. I've been able to just go straight south and hit a couple of rigs and keep on trucking down there to the tuna ground.
That makes it nice.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Well, I know you guys have been doing some near shore stuff too. What you guys been catching closer to the island?
Yeah, we've been wearing out the king mackerel, man. I'm talking about wearing them out. It's been making a lot of my trips easy, even on my 5-hour trips. Just a short little trip. We run out there, I'd say 10, 15 miles or so, and we've been fishing for the king mackerel mostly with live bait. A lot of times we'll troll for them with dusters and cigar minnows, but we've been getting some live pogies early in the morning and just slinging them out there, and they've been hitting them as soon as they hit the water. Been good. Now, couple of days they've been getting finicky. I don't know if they're figuring out, because everybody's been fishing for them, but we've had to size down the line in our hooks a little bit, and that really made a big difference.
You using wire or mono?
Yeah, I've been using 15-pound mono and about a 20-pound 7-strand wire. And that one, when you hook a big fish, you may have to back down on him just so he don't spoil the little trout rod. But it's a lot of fun, man. The people have been loving it. But we lose a lot of fish like that, but we catch a lot more fish like that because we just get so many more bites.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Steady action. That's a great thing.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
And it's cool, man. You can see those king mackerel a lot. I used to think that they would just come up and hit it real fast. They don't, man. If you look at your bait, your little minnow will be swimming on the top, and they'll come up from under it, and they'll look at it, and they'll see 2 or 3 kings actually checking out your bait before they hit it. And when we use that big line, some days they just hit the big line. It doesn't matter. But when you use that big line, you'll see them look at it and shy away from it like they don't want it anymore. That's when you got to say, we got to change something up right here so we can catch it.
For sure, man. You guys getting geared up for round 2 of charter boat snapper season?
Golly, yeah, we are.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. I know the thing what everybody wants to hear, but I just don't. Them fish, they don't need to be fished. They don't need to be beat up anymore this year. They really don't.
Yeah,
we've
it's
had
an interesting situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we get another fish to catch, but we got, I mean, as far as the conservation standpoint, we got plenty of fish to catch now. We've been catching groupers, amberjacks, and kings, and those fish have been fished really hard all year. I think they need a break. But I mean, I'll be glad to go out there and catch them again. But
right, no doubt. Take advantage of a second snapper season all year long.
Yeah, man. When I heard the news, I was kind of excited, but then my heart dropped a little bit too, just because a lot of that close-in snapper fishing has been getting tough. You know, within the first 12 miles, we're just not getting the quality of fish that we used to be getting, and I think that's simply because they're overfished. As long as the seasons have been, and I mean, it's good for everybody that they get to catch them. That's great, but it's just time for them to take a break for a little while.
King, you mentioned some lighter tackle on those kings, and wouldn't you say that's kind of the same for these closer snapper? Kind of definitely lighten up your tackle and your setup for those fish that have been beat up pretty hard, and kind of maybe take the chance on losing some but getting more bites.
Just like you're saying, Wes, there's still some real good fish on them close-in reefs, but they are getting smarter. I remember we had went over way to the east one time where it gets more pressured and the water's just a lot clearer. And you would mark big fish on your fish finder, and you know that they were there. And so we put down some, I think it was 20-pound tests, like fluorocarbon and little tiny hooks and little tiny weights. Mm-hmm. And we would hook a big fish every single time, but he would get us in the structure and cut us off. You know? But, I mean, like you say, I think they're there. They're getting beat up, and but there's still some good ones that live down there, but they're getting smarter, too.
They're big for a reason.
As a fisherman, you got to rack your brain and figure out, you know, why I see them on my fish finder. Why are they not biting?
Right. That is the beauty of snapper fishing. And if you know your electronics well and you can see those, you know, which you can see those fish clear as day, and you're just like, man, they're right here. What's going on? You know, hey, pull out that lighter fluoro, get you a longer leader. I mean, for sure, smaller, kind of hide that hook in your bait.
Yep.
That will go a long way, even if you don't think it does.
Yeah.
So.
And if nothing else, you know, you gave it 100%.
That's right. I've even seen it sometimes on those closer in wrecks. I've seen them get off of the structure a little bit.
Yeah.
Make some bigger circles on the structure and use your machinery. And sometimes that big biomass of fish will be off the structure a little bit.
We just try to fish all around the structure, like what you're saying. I'll start at one end of it and slowly work my way to the next end of it. And sometimes if you pay attention to your numbers on your GPS, that you'll get some better fish or more fish at a particular number on that spot.
Yep, definitely. So the charter boat round 2 for snapper season opens the 15th, right?
That's right.
Friday. So I'm sure you guys are booking up for that. If folks want to get up with you and book a snapper trip or an offshore trip, what's the best way to get in contact with you guys?
Man, they can call that number, that 861-5302, or they can go to Captain Mike online and check out the schedule on there, and they can book straight from the website.
Awesome, brother. That's a great report. We always look forward to hearing from you, and be safe out there. We'll talk to you again next time.
All right, Butch. Always good talking to you, man.
Thanks, brother. All right, guys, let's take a quick break and hear from a few of this week's sponsors. That segment was brought to you by Alabama Marine Resources. The Alabama Marine Resources Division reminds all recreational anglers who harvest gray triggerfish, greater amberjack, or red snapper that their catch must be reported through Snapper Check. This includes vessels, kayaks, and shore anglers who possess any of these reef fish. Reporting is mandatory and must be done prior to landing fish in Alabama, regardless of where the fish were caught. Anglers can report to Snapper Check online at outdooralabama.com or through the official Outdoor AL app. For more information about Snapper Check or any of the 2021 fishing seasons, please visit outdooralabama.com. And also brought to you by Bucks Island. They have new pontoon boats, bass boats, bow riders, and aluminum boats for sale. They provide boat service on all kinds of boats, even if they weren't purchased from Bucks. Visit them at 4500 Highway 77 in Southside, Alabama, or give them a call at 256-442-2588. All right, Captain West, let's head on down to, heck, I'm not even going to try and guess where he's been. Let's go see what Captain Patric Garmeson's up to with Ugly Fishing. Welcome back to the show, Captain Patric. How have you been doing, buddy?
Been doing good, man. Wouldn't trade being a fishing guide for anything at the moment.
Heck yeah. Yeah, kind of sounds like things are heating up. Everything's been hot. Captain Wesley's been smashing the redfish. Now, there's been a ton of flounder around. What you've been chasing? What you've been up to this week?
Mostly redfish, kind of as a primary target, but A lot of trout are starting to show themselves in areas where I would expect them to show up in October. So that's been kind of what I've been rolling out of the gate for now. Has been doing more specific trout fishing in the mornings, and then changing gears once I get on into the morning if trout aren't holding up. Still not seeing a whole lot of keepers in the areas I've been fishing, but the numbers are really getting better. Some white trout mixed in, and actually it's been cool, man. I've had three out of the last 5 charters I was able to bring Cooper along as my deckhand.
I
Although
saw that.
he's
It's
about
nice.
like Richard Rutland up there, taking the bow of the boat the whole time, and
Old
and
bow hog.
yeah. He was out casting. Now the one thing he was quick to make it. Like if someone else caught a fish, he was quick on getting a cast in there. Like nobody else had a shot. So I was very impressed with his style. The last trip he was on with me, we got on some trout, and I had one guy throwing a swim bait. I had one guy throwing a popping cork with a voodoo. Had another guy throwing popping cork, I think with a shrimp as well. And then Cooper was throwing the little slick in the lemon color on a 1/8 ounce, I think, jig head, and he was just throwing it out and doing what I don't even know what his cadence is, but he was wearing them out there for
Cooper's
a while.
cadence.
So
That's right.
yeah. But I don't know if anybody ever watches, if anybody's ever heard of Monster Mike. He's on Instagram and YouTube and stuff. He gets pretty wild into how he fights his fish, and I think that's what Cooper's trying to do when he's dragging them in, man. 16-inch trout, he's just skiing them in, man. They don't stand a chance.
So
But yeah,
sounds like y'all were in shallow water then, huh?
Yeah. So that would be one tip for sure is if you've got some lemon color slicks and you're around some trout, those things seem to be really productive for us up in the bay.
Is that where you've been hanging out, or you've been just kind of everywhere, or just one particular area that you like best?
A lot of the last probably majority of my last probably 10 trips I've been mostly north of like Grand Hotel all the way to the Causeway, and then a few days we've been leaving out of Weeks Bay and kind of fishing that lower 1/3 or even lower to like maybe the lower quarter of the bay. I really haven't ran across many trout worth really targeting for me down on the lower end. There's been a few schools of birds and stuff outside of the mouth of Weeks Bay with some small trout in them, but I haven't really been focused on redfish. Redfish has been a pretty good easy target down there. You can cast net some pogies right there at Big Mouth and either use those pogies free lined or one thing I was trying out here recently was listening to Northwest Florida guys. They do a lot of knocker rig with their live bait in a sense to where the weight would hold the bottom, but then you actually throw slack to your bait and let it swim away from the weight. And had some pretty good success with it. Like even fishing, say 4, 5, 6 feet of water, I thought it was pretty interesting because the bait would, a lot of times you'd look over there and the bait might be 20 feet from where you casted it, and it's really fighting and flashing and making a lot of ruckus, kind of fighting its way up towards the surface, and then you could kind of pull it back away. And anyway, it's something I've never really done much of until here recently. So going pogies 3 ways, I guess: corks, free line, and knocker rig, and using a circle hook has been the easiest way to prevent gut hooking. And if somebody's not looking or doesn't feel the bite right away and they go and they tighten up on the fish and the fish has maybe had the bait, we're still getting most of all of those hooks are going right in the corner of the mouth. getting some good releases. We've been tagging and releasing a lot of fish, and it's been fun. Some big black drum mixed in, and that's always fun when someone sticks one of those. The first thing that they tell me is, "Hey, Cap, I'm stuck."
I got the bottom.
Then the stuck start swimming, and it's like, "Nah, dog, you got a friggin' drum."
Yeah. Fish on.
Like, no, I think it's the bottom. Like, no, that's a drum.
The big ugly.
Yeah, the big uglies.
That's right. Captain Wesley was telling us earlier about the redfish being on fire, and he's been feeding some croakers to them. I talked to Uncle Joey yesterday, the creator of the slick lure, and he was telling me about a croaker colored slick that I think I need to get more information on. Either of you guys or both of y'all been using them?
Man, I have not thrown them because he's also, he and I are working on a prototype color too, and I've been kind of focusing on my prototype color that I'm working on.
Nice.
But he did send me some croaker colors, and I need to I've got a group that should fit that mold of some slick slinging guys here pretty soon. So I may probably just break out a whole assortment and get the day started here and go all slick lure after them.
What about you, Kat? You've been using that croaker color?
That croaker color, man. When I first saw it, I instantly fell in love with it. And it's funny because actually me and Joey did a little bit of wade fishing earlier this year in June. Man, we had an incredible day. And the first cast I made that morning when we hopped out of the boat, I caught a croaker that was like pushing a pound, and it was funny because we were talking about the color of the croaker, and Joey kind of walked on over to me, and we were putting the croaker side by side to he was throwing the croaker color. When I saw that bait and the fish next to each other, I was like, oof, that's deadly right there.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Next cast, I caught like a 6-pound fish. He was having a lot of luck on that croaker color versus like he was numbers wise. I just happened to catch that quality fish, but his numbers wise was putting a hurting on me, and so I switched to it, and I was just wearing them out hand in hand. So the croaker color is deadly and definitely one in my favorite.
Everything eats a croaker.
Yeah, for sure. Croakers eat croakers.
That's right. So.
Yeah, they do. Man, I'll tell you what, I was thinking about this discussion that could happen when we start talking slicks and we start talking colors and stuff. And there's still a lot of people out there that want to give the slick lure a try. And then they hear us one day we're talking about this color and one day we're talking about that color or whatever. I was thinking about it, when you want to make a move and a transition into a different style lure or a different bait or whatever, one of the recommendations I could give to our listeners is to just go one color. Just like if I were to start, if I had never thrown a topwater in my life and I wanted to go throw a topwater lure, I would buy a pink and chrome heading one knocker, and that would be how I would learn how to throw topwater. And then you can go from there. And then in the slick lure, in my opinion, Cool Beans.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Cool Beans is going to work 95% of all days out there. So anybody that's like, all right, well, we hear about this color and that color, and now we got croaker to worry about, and Patric's working on another color to add to that. And but I would say if you have not caught a fish and you want to catch one on a slick lure, just start with a pack of Cool Beans.
Yep, and, that's great advice.
Go from there. And it's about that time, man. I mean, we're starting to catch a few trout, like in the birds and stuff, when they're kind of eating everything. We're catching some on the slicks, but it won't be long, and that's going to be all the rods. Pretty much every rod on my boat will have one tied on here pretty soon.
Oh yeah, you're mentioning the Cool Beans. That bait is just so versatile in any kind of water conditions. And
I was going to say, I've caught fish in super clear water with it. I've caught fish in super tannic water.
Yep.
I've caught fish in pretty much every water clarity situation. Cool Beans.
And then pretty solid. We experienced that this past week. And I know I was talking about redfish, and redfish really stole the show this week, but the trout we did catch, We're on croakers mainly. There were these pockets of water that may have been a little dingy, and I don't know if it was just because of the bottom, or I think more of it was because they were maybe behind some structure that went all the way from the bottom up to the top of the water column, and it kind of kept that water kind of sitting in there. And because you could go 15 yards on the other side and it just be nice and clear, and we used cool beans a lot this past week, and it definitely prevailed. Some guys were throwing that swamp thing color. I love that color, especially when it gets a little dingy. Those red flakes help make that bait have a good, solid, defined profile for a fish. But and also too, what I noticed as far as choosing, we all have spots we like to fish, and we all have spots that we do well in, and I think a lot of the biggest thing that I picked up on was, as I was approaching that spot, there was a couple times where I just go straight in there, right? Position myself to where I was catching them last time. And I might tell my customer, hey, this is where we're going to kind of try to at least put our baits in this area on this side of the boat, or wherever that might be, not so much out here. And, of course, you always got somebody that's just going to go the complete opposite direction.
Oh, yeah.
And then they would throw way out there where we just came from. And before I could even turn around, their rod was bent over, and, they had a nice trout on. And so instead of just doing that, I really kind of slowed down, came in slow, and then started fishing on my way to where the area I had been doing good, and that put some trout on our lines. And because the redfish were so thick, everywhere that we fished, the trout really didn't have a chance. But yeah, that cool beans color, man, it did great for us this week for everything, all walks, especially the little slick. We use that a lot.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think I caught just myself. I got to do a little fishing Friday. I had two guys, and they were pretty good fishermen, and I think I caught 17 flounder on the little slick cool beans. And finally they were like, all right, Cap, give me some of those, because I told them, I was like, I know you want to throw it. And they're like, well, the croakers had really been getting the reds, and they were loving that fight. So they were kind of waiting out that red
skeptical
bite,
to change.
Yeah. And finally like, all right, I'll throw one. So eventually, both of them were throwing it, and we caught some more flounder. But
I'm going to get good at that flounder fishing one day. I went back with Monday with Captain Richard, and I still sucked.
Well,
just plain and simple.
Well, you got to be brutally honest. So
you can definitely get better if you're honest with yourself that you suck at something too.
Hey, that's good stuff right there, bro.
This is what it is.
There you go.
I'm gonna get good at it. I got to put in my time.
I got humbled. I went with Richard and Dylan Tuesday, and so yesterday I had the hot hand first thing, which Dylan,
he's good.
I just want to add, he's
good.
That dude's incredible.
He's a good stick.
Fishing.
Yeah, he's a good stick.
And Richard is too. And I love going on those trips because I always learn a bunch.
Yep.
And I learn a lot from Dylan and Richard.
Yep.
I had the hot hand first thing in the morning. I think I've caught like 6 or 7 nice ones. We were like, me and Dylan were kind of catching them pretty good, and we were kind of looking over at Richard, and we were like, all right, man, it's time for you to put a fish in the boat. He was like, I was wondering when y'all were going to say something.
Wonder when the ribbon was going to start.
He finally stuck one, and then towards the end, man, Dylan and Richard just went on a spree, and I was throwing a little bit different color, but it wasn't, I'm a big fan of color presentation, but cadence, and the way they were doing it was totally different. I was still stuck on aggressive cadence, and they'd slowed it down a lot,
little bitty twitches,
and pretty much just dragging it, and they were having the luck because I was throwing in the same exact spot. Of course, we were fishing, a spot where you get hung up a lot, so we were constantly, getting off the rocks and stuff and whatever was down there. But yeah, they went on a little spree, man, and I was like, all right, that's enough. I gotta slow down. I always say every wrist has its own twist.
Yep.
A lot of times we can get tied up in watching. It's good to watch somebody and learn or whatever, or ask questions, but if you start just watching somebody and you don't apply it, then you're gonna kind of, what I like to call, get like fatigue will come in, and you won't start working that bait right at all. Like every wrist has its own twist. It's like, I just agree that, if you kind of apply everything and stop and just be humble, be ready to learn, be teachable.
It's a lot about confidence too, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, you start off with a light hand, you can catch them, you got it down pat, and then you start getting into your own head. And that works both ways.
That's just what goes to show you, and rings true, is that cadence is very important. So if you don't have the humbleness to be teachable, then you're not going to have the confidence to ring it true. So
that's right, man. This is like a motivational freaking
let's go
sermon here.
Let's do it. That's what we do on here, man.
Yeah, I have to concur, because one of my first trips throwing the slick, like getting after it, throwing the slick, was on the boat with Richard. And at first I was catching kind of 1-to-1, and then all of a sudden he went on a tear, and then I basically quit fishing and watched him catch 2 or 3. I was still casting, but I was like almost just basically casting out, reeling it in while I was watching him to see where he was getting bit in his cadence. Yeah. And then I picked up and started doing a variation of mine, because I don't know, it's like kind of a superhuman type.
Oh, his is a very spastic situation.
Oh, it's definitely a mold. It's patented. Like, you can't. Coke makes Coke. I'm not going to make Coke at home and sell it.
Yeah, you can't replicate whatever he does with that. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So once I got, getting something close to him, and then started catching fish again, and then over the years, I've developed my own pattern and my own cadence, my own style, and
there you go.
And it works for me now.
Yep. What else you been up to, man?
Kind of squeezed in a little bit of nearshore stuff one day last week, and for half of my trip today, had podcast listeners, Bob and his wife Pandora Moreau. Anyway, they fished with me this morning and had a good trip inshore, because I was a little worried about the wind, and then finally I was like, well, the wind's not getting any worse, so they really wanted to get out in the Gulf, and we got out there, and man, it was zero current, and
really?
Man, I was chumming, and couldn't get anything going. We finally got a couple of snapper to bite about the time we needed to wrap it up and start headed back. So I don't know what the deal was there, but the waters I went to the east of the channel and I have a chum buddy that I use, and I have like 30 feet of rope on it, and I could see the chum buddy perfectly when the rope was stretched out. And which probably some of that has to do with the fact that the current wasn't moving at all.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Not stirring it up at all. But anyway, there was, I guess because of that light current, the fish weren't really fired up. But the time before that, we went out and we fished to the west. And we had a cool trip, caught some sharks. I had a dad and his 3 teenage daughters, and none of them had ever fished saltwater ever. So catching their first, all of them got their first shark. So that's always
nice.
a big check mark for newbies on saltwater. And then they caught some red snapper, caught 2 legal ling.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. It's a heck of a
What
day.
else did they? Yeah. So now, as far as me being a little bit, being a fish snob that I am, we did not get to sight fish those ling, but catching them nonetheless was very cool. And
what kind of bait?
We just straight pogies, fishing the rigs, and actually I think both of them ate the pogies on the steel leader because I got tired of sharks cutting us off. So I just put a big old chunk of steel on there. I mean, it wasn't trying to be finesse at it at all, and that's what we caught the ling on, and a couple nice snapper, and they had a blast.
I can relate to the ling personally because I'm always hungry.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, that's right. Just eat it. Captain King gave us the report a minute ago. He said the king mackerels have been pretty thick and they're in close as well. He's been catching those on live pogies, just kind of drift lining them.
did you see any of those getting?
I have. I've been aggravated with them, man. Earlier in the season, I was every single trip out. We were catching. We'd at least have one or two kings that we would catch, or at least get boat side before they cut us off or something. But I haven't seen one in probably since like June. So it's been a little aggravating. Normally we catch them kind of sporadically throughout the summer. So maybe I'm just not good at it, or just haven't been around the fish. But no, I really haven't done much. And then there's some pretty doggone chunky, hefty Spanish mackerel at the rigs and stuff in the bay.
Nice.
Just I've made a few stops out there, and like some 3.5, 4 pound Spanish. I mean, something that really is going to stretch the line.
What do you what kind of setup did you find work best for those Spanish, like as far as getting them in, and not breaking off? You just use leader or steel, or
one alt or 2 alt KO hook on 40-pound leader. I will catch, most of the time we can catch them until one, several. Like sometimes we could catch a dozen or more on that setup, because that KO will get them right in the corner of the mouth.
That makes sense.
But they will cut us from time to time. I mean, sometimes they just get the bait and get it down into their mouth before the angler feels the bite, and when they come tight, it'll cut them. But if they're ready and they feel the bite, it's very rare we get cut off, and it's 40-pound test is kind of the sweet spot for me.
Mono or fluoro or
just mono.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you've got typically a free line or just a small split shot or something, is going to be the ticket there. But I tell you what, man, everywhere, like, it seems like every single gas rig in the bay and in the nearshore Gulf, it has more spade fish on it than I've ever seen. They will devour your shrimp in seconds. So if you're getting chewed up real quick, then that's probably your nemesis there, and you may have to just kind of reposition and see if you can get away from them. But now, if you catch some of them bigger spade fish, you're pretty good to eat.
That's probably what's getting it when you're mentioning the spade fish being really thick. A lot of times you'll throw out there and you'll reel back in and you never even felt anything or seen anything. If you're slip corking, you're like, what's taking my bait? And I'm like, that's spade fish.
Yeah. Oh, definitely spade fish.
Yep, they're sneaky.
But yeah, man, it's shaping up. The water up on the north end of the bay is cleaned up.
What's the temperature like up there?
82, 84, and by the end of the trip, it's still too warm.
Yeah,
that's what we were saying earlier.
That's got. I mean, people that I've talked to are like, man, I don't know, man. It seemed like we was whacking them last year this time, and we were, but the water was probably 72, 74.
Right.
I mean, I know for a fact almost every day I left the dock in October last year, I had a hoodie on, and I don't think I've put one on yet. And I'm kind of a poon when it comes to being on a chilly boat ride. And if I'm not putting a hoodie on, it's still pretty doggone hot.
Man, looking at the weather.
Once we see some cooler temps and get that water temperature down, I think there's going to be a lot of people starting to get more excited about it and start talking about all the trout they're catching versus all the trout they're not catching right now.
Yeah, just looking at the weather, man. I think Saturday, Sunday, and Monday we're all going to be in the 50s on the lows, and then the next week highs are high 70s and 80. So I would think it's going to cool down pretty quickly.
Yeah,
we'll see.
That'll be the deal. I mean, it'll take a couple days for that to start. For that adjustment to take place,
right?
But that won't be long. Wes, I haven't been in the Sound at all. What's the mullet look like down there? I mean, in the bay, it seems like there's mullet for just every square inch of Mobile Bay. Is it the same down there?
Yeah, man. Every size mullet too, everywhere from like 2 inch, inch and a half, kind of like that size finger mullet, and then bigger like in between, and then the bigger mullet. We've been seeing a lot of them all the way to the west end, even on the North Shore, and a lot of them just kind of on top of the water, just kind of how they do, like they just kind of surface the water and walk around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't walk 'cause
About
they
to
don't
say, I
have
don't think they
legs,
walk, but-
but they surface walk, and we've been seeing big schools of them, and we caught some in the cast net yesterday, and man, some good size ones that we were using. And you were mentioning the rig with the sinker, or the letting your bait kind of just be able to go out from a knocker rig, like and kind of do its own thing and travel where it wants to go. And we saw a lot of that yesterday, which we threw pretty much all artificial, but we dropped a few finger mullet down, and that was what they were doing too. They were able to kind of like venture out, because and I guess sometimes that works, and then sometimes you don't want it. Like, you want your bait to be confined
Yep.
to the bottom. And a little tip that I like to do with that is, you get a finger mullet that's 6-7 inches, which is a good flounder bait. I'll put on a like the tie for your slip cord rig, like
Mhm.
your stopper, your depth
Bobber stopper, or
your
whatever.
bobber stopper. I'll tie one on those real quick,
Mm.
keep my weight keep that
Going
fish
up
from
too
being
far.
able to travel too far.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to Wes breaking out the tips man. I thought this was my segment.
Oh, mad scientist.
Come on with it.
Hey, one other thing I was gonna ask you, Wes,
Yeah.
because I know people are gonna ask me about it. It's like, all right, so here in most of throughout the season, we talk about, man, you find the mullet, you find the fish, and right now it's way more challenging to find a spot without mullet. So
Yeah.
what are you doing to just, I mean, are you just putting blinders on and just kind of getting to comfortable water, or are you looking for the mullet to be active and jumping and showering and all that stuff?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because yesterday Richard and I were talking about bad habits of fishing, and a real bad habit that I always like to try not to have is fishing nostalgia, like with nostalgia, and letting that control your next move. Because like you said, when you're always looking for activity, when I see the mullet, like I said, dancing on the top, I guess you could call it troubling the top, but if I see them actually jumping, you can see mullet just kind of jump
Lazily.
and then you can see them shoot, quick skips. A lot of times the birds might fly over and scare a school of them, and then they just kind of shower the top. But I noticed that when you'd see those mullet skipping rapidly and like violently, literally like they're running from something, I can say that we definitely had more success with schools of fish. So those mullet were definitely pressured, and the fish we caught under them were schooled up thick. It wasn't like one fish here and then have to work for them. It was literally, it was just a bunch of life. And those redfish that I mentioned earlier, they were the bulls that were schooled up in the lower end of the bay. Man, they were eating ladyfish. I watched one of them chase a ladyfish. Literally,
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, and I was like, man, that was a ladyfish. doing a back handspring. Getting chased by
Getting away from that red.
redfish, And they literally, and Pat, you're talking about the transition happening, regardless of the water temps, and I think that's just the instinct, because seeing those fish drive up into the bay like that, that's your answer right there. It's cold hard evidence that that's happening for sure. So.
Man, that's a great segment, guys. That's a great report, Captain Patric. I'm sure I know this is kind of you love this time of year. You love that winter and fall fishing, but if folks want to get up with you and book a trip, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
First off, go to my website, uglyfishing.com. I'm booked up all the way into December right now. Still got some dates in December that are sitting on go, and that's the lure time of the year. So anybody that's listening that wants more hands-on lure fishing for trout and redfish, then that's the month to get it in. Or give me a call or shoot me a text at 251-747-1554.
Awesome, man. We appreciate the report as always, and we look forward to hearing from you next time, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Butch. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, sir. Keep whacking them. We'll talk to you soon. Well, that's another awesome report, and it was brought to us by Boaters List. Boaters List is your new reliable and fast resource designed to link everyone to everything on the water. If you own or run a boat, you know how difficult it can be to find the right company for the task at hand. Boaters List makes it easy to find the service that you are looking for. Locate anything from fuel docks to service repairs or rentals of large yachts, even down to paddle boards and all things in between. BoatersList.com will always strive to make it better on the water. And also brought to you by Mustad Fishing. Today, 1 in 4 hooks in the world is made by Mustad Fishing. The Mustad brand can be found in over 160 countries and covers all disciplines of fishing. Now more than just a hook manufacturer, they have expanded their product range over the years to satisfy every need of the modern fisherman and woman. They understand that anglers like you would never accept anything less than premium quality, which is why they hold themselves to that same standard. See why Mustad is the best-selling hook brand in the world. Enjoy 25% off your next order at mustad-fishing.com by using code GREATDAYS at checkout. All right, guys, that's another great segment in place of our onshore report today. We're going to be going over and checking with Joe Baya over at the Northwest Florida Fishing Report. And we're going to be talking to Peter Jordan over at Delta Marine and Outfitters. We're going to be talking microskiffs. What'd you say, Joe?
What's going on, Butch?
Not much, man. Excited about this one. You and I have recently got kind of in the weeds on this about what exactly defines a microskiff and what are the advantages and disadvantages of a microskiff and a kayak and things all around that area. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I think this segment comes from a place of, we hear a lot of guys kind of griping, they see these really decked out kayaks and they're big, they're heavy, they've got all the bells and whistles. And I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say, why don't you just get a skiff?
Yep, all the time.
That's the question we're going to answer today, is whether or not he should get a skiff, or maybe he was doing just right where he was. Peter Jordan sells both skiffs and kayaks, so I think he's qualified to answer this question and help people make that decision. Peter, tell us about Delta Marine and Outfitters, what you guys do, where you're located, and what y'all specialize in.
Well, thanks, guys. So we're here in Daphne, Alabama, off County Road 64. We carry custom Ginu boats. We also carry new canoe kayaks, and we also have a full-service fly shop in-house too. So it's a lot of great stuff to get in for your inshore deal. And we kind of get that question a lot of, when do you move from that kayak to the micro skiff? Now, whether it's one that we carry or another brand that you may be looking at, those are some good questions. One of the things we talked about before we came on was having families, having kids. Maybe your kids got a little bit too big to be in the kayak with you. And I take my small kids in the new canoes with me, and it's great. It's wonderful. They're close by. It's a lot of fun. But eventually you get to that point that just the kayak isn't doing it for you. And I think when you get to that point, a lot of it is considerations on taking kids or taking a friend, or maybe you eventually run out of range, because I don't care what kayak you've got. Eventually you're going to get to that edge of where you feel comfortable paddling, or where you feel comfortable pedaling to that micro skiff now gives you that ability to have that range. One of the things that a lot of people are curious about is what really defines a micro skiff. And to me, that's a boat that's 16 feet and under 40 horsepower. And it's one that you can get up onto a poling platform with. And a skiff is defined as a flat bottom boat. And yeah, there are a lot of parts of the hull when you come into it. They give you the advantage to go over, say, rough chop or better stability or whatever that may be. But eventually you're going to get to that flat bottom, which gives you to that really, really shallow draft. So let's say you're in a kayak and you're used to accessing super skinny areas. Well, that microskiff is going to give you that same ability, except for now, because I can be on a poling platform, I'm 10 feet up in the air. So with that poling platform gives you access to 6 inches of draft. That's all we need. We only need about 6 inches of water. We're floating, we're getting in places. So it allows us to access small rivers, tidal ponds, tidal creeks, flats, places you normally could not get to.
Talking about that draft, I mean, it doesn't sound like you're losing a whole lot moving from a kayak to a microskiff.
Not really. I'd say it's probably only about 3 inches, to be honest.
So what about speed? You mentioned that you're under 40 horses. What can you expect in terms of speed in a microskiff? I mean, obviously having propulsion is going to, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I've seen a lot of the kayaks now outfitted today with the Torqeedo motors, and I mean, you can still get propulsion out of a kayak. So what kind of speeds can you expect if you've got a full crew, you're taking, you're at max capacities and wanting to use that boat?
So most of the time, what we're going to look at is a lot of it is going to be based in the weight of that hull. A microskiff is an extremely light hull. I mean, it is very, very light. I want to say like an LT25 with the motor. And the LT25 is the larger of the custom Ginu boats we sell. The larger of those, 16 feet, it's a fairly wide boat with a 25 horse Tohatsu, and she's going to push 2 grown men and all the gear we can put on there. About 30 miles an hour, between 28 and 30, depending on conditions. Whereas if you go up to a boat that maybe has a 40 horsepower motor, a lot of that's going to depend on your hull speed and then the way it's designed. But I would say you're safely looking anywhere from 25 to around 35. You're not really going to break over that 35 mile per hour mark simply because eventually that's as fast as the hull's just going to go.
So, you mentioned 2 grown men.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 2 little boys that need to start going with me. Just talk about capacities a little bit, not just from a human standpoint. That's one consideration, but also a capacity standpoint. What are these boats capable of in terms of passengers and overall cargo?
Well, each boat's going to be different. So I'm going to kind of go from what the boats that we carry. And a lot of microskiffs they're built in-house, like you order it directly from the manufacturer themselves. With Custom Ginu, it's a little bit different relationship. You can order it from the factory, but we also have it here. But the LT25 is going to have a 3-person capacity, and she's going to give you up to 580 pounds of storage inside the boat. So she's going to be able to carry certainly 2 grown men, all the cooler stuff you want, all your tackle and your gear. But what I always try to stress to people is these are small boats. These aren't big boats. And what it really forces you to do is take less, figure out what you can do with less. It forces you to
streamline your gear.
Yeah. And kind of goes to the idea that Zen idea of perfection isn't when you can't add anything else to it. It's when you can't take anything else away. That's when you've reached that perfect point. And a microskiff really lets you do that. So maybe you're used to taking a huge tackle bag and 5 or 6 rods and a cooler and all that. You're not going to have that ability. You're on the boats we carry. I think the maximum number of rods is 8 rods. And I know some guys, they'll take 10 rods if given a chance. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as soon as you take a friend with you, you got to remember what you've got inside there. Every time you're adding something to one of these really small boats, you're taking away space. So that's what you have to figure out is how you value your space, how you're going to set things up. But it will certainly handle a lot more than you expect. We've got folks that hunt out of theirs a lot because it does give you such shallow draft. And a lot of folks will bring family outings. It'll handle a lot. It's a good workhorse, essentially, for that purpose.
I think about what you were saying about it being a lightweight hull. One of the things that got me into kayaking is the ability to grab a kayak, throw it in the back of my truck, go to my nearest water hole, throw it in the water and get out on the water, even if it's just for an hour. It's not a big investment of like trailer in a boat and doing everything you got to do to launch, a bay boat.
Yeah, totally. And I understand that. For me, since we've got a bay boat as well. We're fortunate that way. And since we brought in that custom Ginu, it allows you to be like, oh, hey man, just throw the fly rod in, throw your pack in, throw a cooler in and go. Like you need a 10 minutes heads up. Whereas the bay boat, a lot of times you're getting it prepped up the night before. You're getting everything ready to go the night before. And your cleanup time is nil. I always like to say all you need is a deck brush, a water hose, and a bottle of Dawn. You get done fishing at the end of the day, throw the Dawn all over it, scrub it down, hose it off, and you're done. It's so much easier, so much more enjoyable. And you've got a small single axle trailer, so it's really easy to hook up and go. I mean, we've even had people hook up to a Prius and take their boats home.
Yeah. Well, we talked about what you can do, some of the things you can do in a microskiff that you're limited, say from a kayak perspective. They're going to give you increased capacities in both people and gear. They're going to give you increased range in the sense that you've got more propulsion, more horsepower to get where you want to go. Flip side of that is, what do you lose if you're getting out of kayaks and going into a microskiff? I mean, where do you see that you're limited? I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is one of the other reasons I got into kayaking was being able to launch from the beach and hit some of the near shore reefs and things of that nature. Do you think you give up much moving from a kayak to a microskiff, or is this one of those things that most guys kind of have both?
A lot of guys have both. We've had most of our customers already have a kayak, and then they go to the Ginu. And what I like to say is, basically, with a lot of these micro skiffs, this is one of the real joys of them. If you can get the tires wet, if you can get to where it's just going to float, that hull, it's going to come right off. So a lot of times, for a lot of guys that have like really big boats, like our new Canoe Unlimited, or maybe you've got a Hobie PA14, a lot of these guys, we're putting them on trailers. Because these are really heavy boats. I mean, a lot, like take the PA, you're looking at, with nothing on it, 120 pounds. That's a big girl. So a lot of times it's a lot easier to trailer. So a lot of the kayak launches that you might be able to use your trailer and back your boat into, then yes, you can 100% back your micro skiff into it. Now, that being said, if you've got like, today I was at Dolphin Island this morning before I came into the office, and there's no way I could have got to where I was fishing at with a micro skiff. I'd have had to go all the way around the island, which isn't a big deal because you do have the range to do it. So the kayak is still going to take the edge on the fact that I can just keep it in the back of the truck. I can still slide it off, and it's a lot less expensive. You don't have to worry about registration. We're not worried about motor upkeep. We're not worried about fuel. And so there is, again, so much to be said for that simplicity.
Definitely. Yeah, it sounds like you need both, Joe.
I mean, I like that. I always like to let my wife listen to these podcasts and say,
I got to have it. You heard it from the man's mouth.
From the expert.
That's right.
He said you can't just have one. No, I think it makes sense to me. It's like we always talk about. Everybody wants a boat that can get in 6 inches of water.
Do 70.
And I just want to run out 40 miles and catch snapper, 3-foot chop, and I don't want to get wet. It's like, it doesn't exist. Usually the boat that does everything doesn't do any of those things superbly well.
Right. I would agree.
So in my early years, I used to want to try to find one thing that could kind of do it all. And I've just learned as I've gotten older that really in the long run, you're better off to have things that are purpose built for the thing that you want to do. When you get to the point where you're doing it enough, you'll know, all right, it's time to invest because I'm going to get the use out of this for that specific purpose.
Well, kind of going into that idea of having something purpose built. We talked about earlier how a lot of these things are custom made, which is really, really cool. So with the microskiff, here's an advantage you have to a microskiff. In general, I'm referencing the brand we carry, Custom Ginu, although pretty much every other one has these same considerations. When you pick up your kayak, you're picking up the same kayak as everyone else. And then you've got to come in and make your modifications. The cool thing about a microskiff is it's a custom built boat. So like, let's say you come in and you're sitting down and you're like, hey, Peter, I really want to, look at one of these custom Ginus. I want to set it up the way I want it set up. So at that point, it's like, okay, do you want a center console, side console, aluminum standing console? Do you just want a tiller? Do you want a grab bar? Do you want front decks? Do you want back decks? How many live wells do you want? Do you want your live wells insulated? How do you want your electronics set up? And so at that point, even though I'm in a similar size comparison to that, because I'm in that 16 foot, so moving from 14 foot isn't such a huge deal. The advantage is now it brings you an entire world of customization. Every one of these boats is extremely unique to that owner and to what they wanted. So it does become a very purpose-built thing. That being said, each hull is the exact same hull. So you will be faced with the same limitations. However, it does allow for so much customization. Like in my boat, I have a standalone grab bar, so I run a tiller. I love that because it gives me the most available space in the boat. But at the same time, I sell a ton of center consoles because for guys like For like you, Joe, you're talking about, hey, I want to bring the kids out. Well, now I've got space for my little man to sit right beside me and for my other kid to sit right on that center console on that seat. I've got 3 live wells now. I can do whatever I want to, and that opens up a lot of stuff. So you're asking yourself, what are your considerations? Are storage and seating a bigger consideration? Is open space and platform a better consideration? So that's one of the big things is it is definitely a purpose-built tool that does allow for a ton of customization. That's why I tell people so often, it's really important that you come lay hands on the boats to see how are you going to use it. And that's a big consideration.
Definitely is.
It makes a lot of sense. And you also, you think about people have different desires. Like you said earlier, some guys want to hunt
Yep.
out of theirs a certain time of the year. One guy may say, look, all I like to do is stalk the flats, and fly fish for redfish. Or another guy wants, everybody's got their things that they like to be able to do. And it sounds like you really got a platform that's somewhat modular to be able to make it the way that you want it based on the things you want to do. And that's been one of the cool things about doing this podcast, is just seeing the differences in the fisheries between Northwest Florida and in Alabama, and all the different tributaries that feed Mobile Bay, estuaries, that feed Mobile Bay. And then you get over here into the Santa Rosa Beach area, Choctawhatchee Bay, and you gin clear water and flats and make you think about South Florida, so there's a lot of different needs, even in just 120 miles of coastline, but you got the ability to make it yours,
Yeah.
What are we talking about budget? When we think about a kayak, one of the things I think that's a con is, you take a guy like me, wife, 2 children, pretty soon we're all going to be going together. And if I wanted to get everybody out on the kayak, if you've ever paddled with your wife, you know that she needs her own kayak. You do not want to really be tandem, in my opinion. But I'm minimum 2 kayaks, maybe looking at 4 kayaks. And there's no economies of scale. We got to have 4 nets.
Yeah.
We got to have 4 fish finders if everybody wants one. I think you miss out on some of the economies of scale you do with a skiff. So at what point do you think it starts to make sense to say, man, you really need to step up to a skiff?
Well, you do bring up a good point. So when eventually you do start looking at how much money is it going to cost to outfit the entire family. Anytime you go to a skiff, and pretty much every micro skiff is still a mom and pop operation. It's still a hand laid hull. It still kind of goes back to the roots of what micro skiffs came out of. So like if you look way back in the day, I'm quite sure you guys are familiar with Hell's Bay. The first whip ray that came out, that was just a really purpose-built, beautiful, hand-laid hull. So a ton of these micro skiffs are in that same thing. So when we look at it, we are going to be paying a considerable amount more than a kayak, more than probably 3 or 4 kayaks, depending on, I take that back. Depends on the kayak.
Right.
Depends on the kayak. I take that back. Depends on the kayak. So going back to that, kind of consideration is eventually going to get to cost, because you are outfitting multiple kids, multiple adults to get into multiple kayaks. So let's say you're wanting to do a full pedal driven boat. Well, like in our new canoes, we're looking at around $3,000 for one of those boats. Now you've got a wife and 2 kids, and let's say your kids are older. Now we're sitting around $12,000 in boats. So the question is, when do you want to step into that? A lot of the boats we have are going to go anywhere between $16,000 and $22,000. Depends on how you want to set it up. But the big advantage we have is in the ability to finance it like a typical boat. So you're going to have nice long terms. Most of the time we're looking at around 10 to 12 years. Interest rates are pretty low, anywhere from 4 to 8%. So most times when I quote somebody, I just pull 6 because it's just a number right there in the middle. So now we're looking at, let's say you buy a $20,000 boat, you're putting 10% down because that's what your companies are going to want to finance. And you're looking at $180 a month. And so that's a consideration too, is now I'm not having to come out of pocket that much money, whereas now you can finance it out. So those are other considerations that you do have the ability to do is in finance, and also too in resale value later on. I don't think I have to tell anybody that the used market for boats right now is insane. It's nuts. And that's not always going to stay that way. But the big thing about it is too, in the area we're at, you certainly have a lot more kayaks on the market than you have boats like this. So that is something to kind of think about, is what are you going to pull out of your pocket right now versus what is your monthly budget? But for most people that are buying both these kinds of boats, whether you're spending $3,000 or $4,000 on a kayak, or you're spending that much on a down payment on a skiff, certainly there are budget considerations to take in mind. But I think more than anything else, it's going to come down to what are your needs. It doesn't matter what you pay for something if it doesn't meet what you need it to be. If you're not happy with it at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you paid.
I think before we, in kind of planning this segment out and the questions that we wanted to ask you, I can't speak for Butch, but I know in my head, I was kind of thinking like most people probably, like upgrade from a kayak to a microskiff. Maybe they get rid of their kayaks and now they got a microskiff, and it really doesn't sound like it's an either or question. So it's really not even fair to lump the two in and say, hey, you'd spend just as much or close to it having kayaks and having a microskiff. And really, it's just two different purposes. You can't do the same things with either of them. So it's really not fair to even put them in the same conversation in some respects.
It's an honest thing, though. It's an honest consideration because so many people do come from kayaks. That is a background. We have a tremendous community of kayak anglers in our area, whether it's Alabama, Mississippi, Northwest Florida. We've got a really great community of kayak anglers, tons of different little associations, great tournaments, whole 9 yards. And these guys that are coming from these kayaks into these micro skiffs, they've been doing the kayak thing for a long time. They've really enjoyed it. And now they're ready to kind of stretch their legs, go a little bit further, go to new places that they've never had access to, take family that they have not been able to take with them. And so eventually it comes down to, can you put the same electronics on a kayak you can on a skiff? Yeah, totally. We see all kinds of crazy combos, and it's awesome. That's one of the cool things about it. Can I put a motor on kayaks now? Yeah, totally. We can put up to, 2.5 horse outboard on our new canoes, so
That's crazy.
Crazy as it sounds. Or that boat rover we were talking about earlier. Yeah, you can do that. And that's really cool. But you're eventually going to get to that point where you kind of need to step into that boat. But the difference is going from that micro skiff to something like a bay boat is that, well, we talked about prep time, so much less time to throw that thing in the water. Another thing is too, the places you can access are unreal. I always like to say, I thought that I knew a lot about our Delta, right? Here in Mobile Bay, up in there. And man, by the time I could access these new waters, these new hidden lakes, these new little creeks, I realized I didn't know squat. I didn't know anything. And so it opens up a whole new realm of places you can go. So let's say you want to hit a small river. If it's chopped up bad in the bay, I can run over to the Perdido River and run way on up there. Or I can run up Fish River and access all kinds of different stuff. So it gives you access to new places you couldn't do, and now you can take family and friends.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The other thing too, you're talking about access is, and Butch, you just dealt with this with your skiff and going from stepping down from a basically a bay boat to having a skiff, and the handling for if you are just solo, you're having the conversation of, yeah, I'd like to put the boat in the water, but I really don't want to do it by myself because it's 20-something foot boat, tying it up, putting anchor out, doing all these things that you got to do on the boat can be tough if it's just you or just you and your dog. Now you step down into a skiff and it's like, yeah, I can take care of this boat by myself, no problem. But I still have the ability to access some of these small waters that you're talking about that I couldn't get into with the bay boat. So I don't lose the range I would lose with a kayak.
Right. And plus you also have a really nice electronics array. We can run, nice GPS mapping, side imaging, whole 9 yards, but also I love the fact that I can put a Talon on the back of it or a micro power pole. I've got an iPilot on the bow of the boat.
Yeah.
It's really nice, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot of big boat features in a small package.
Well, it definitely makes sense for the right people. You just got to ask yourself, what am I trying to do? And is this the best platform for that? So if somebody has more detailed questions about their specific situation, hey, maybe they got 3 kids, maybe they want to bring 4 people, all these different kind of questions that are specific to them and the waters they fish. How do they reach out to you guys? Maybe come by, take a look at some of the different micro skiffs and kayaks that you have. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So they can go to our website. They can go to www.deltamarineandoutfitters.com. They can stop by the store. We're open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 6. And they can stop in, take a look at these boats in-house. We normally have I'd like to say we normally have at least one or two on hand. Most of our boats are custom ordered, although we do try to have one in-house so that people can lay hands on it all the time.
Probably tough, right, in these current times.
It is really tough. It is really tough. And these boats have such a high demand for people that are used to it. It may be new to our area, but it's definitely not new in other parts of the country. Whether you're in Florida, Louisiana, or the low country in South Carolina, these boats have a huge demand because of all the things we talked about. And so definitely the best thing you can do is come lay hands on it. But if you can't do that, or I don't have it in-house, we have a YouTube channel that we do through our fly shop, Lost Angler. And so if you go to YouTube, you check out the Lost Angler channel, every boat that we've had come in stock that's been different than a new model or whatever, and we have done videos of it. So this way you can see each feature of the boat, see all these different things. And I try to go into detail talking about this is the plus of this. This is the takeaway from this, because it is such a small platform that there are going to be pros and cons. So you are going to have to weigh your options. You know, I say all the time, there's no perfect boat. You have to figure out how to make the least number of compromises possible in your boat. And I don't care, obviously, what size boat you're in, whether you're in a 36-foot Cape or you're in a 16-foot Ginu. There's going to be things you have to take into consideration. What do I have to have? What can I live without? What do I need?
Peter, there's no substitute for putting your hands on a piece of equipment and really getting the feel for it. Thanks for sharing your knowledge of what we can talk about versus what we can actually see. And good luck with you for the rest of this year with your fall fishing season. It ought to be a good one.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. And if you guys ever get a wild hair, stop in, and we do sea trials. So if you are wanting to see, is this the right boat for me? Am I worried it may be too small, or it may be more than I want to deal with? Then if you give us a call here at the store, give me a 24 hours heads up. We'll have a boat in the water for
Very
you.
cool, man.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
Enjoyed it, Peter.
All right, guys. Thank you all so much.
Butch, there's something about having a nice light skiff.
No doubt, man. I can definitely relate to pretty much everything that Peter said. I definitely learned a little bit, but Melissa and I started out with kayaks. That was our first purchases. We bought two of them because, as you pointed out, tandem is the fastest way to do a divorce, in my opinion.
No, it's not.
Regardless,
it's the best way to see if you've got a keeper or not.
Right. True. Yeah, I can name several instances of bikes and kayaks where it was.
If you tandem anything together and you don't, and no one murders the other person, then probably keeper material.
Agree, but we realized very quickly that was not going to be an option moving forward. So, but yeah, man, we had the kayaks, had two of those, and then we, stepped up to a 21-foot bay boat, and had the kids, had the dog, and it's nice to have that room on the bigger boat, but it is a lot more work. It's a lot more work to launch the big boat. So we stepped down to a Microskiff, 16 with a 30 horse. And that's all we ever take out now. It's so much easier to put in the water. It's so much easier to put back up, and you literally just spray it off and roll on.
Well, and you realize too that for most people, and everybody's got a different need,
For sure.
but like for people who are thinking about it, the vast majority of the time, it is just you and one other person, or you and a pet, and I think that's just, it's just nice to have a light little boat. You can just run out real quick, come back in. It's not a big investment. I mean, that's why a lot of people get into kayaks, is the simplicity. And I think where the Microskiff fits in is what I've noticed since I've gotten into kayaks is, like, you get out there and you're tempted to be like, well, dang, if I just had a side scan, and then you're like, well, I got the electronics, and now I got okay, well, I need an electric motor. By the time what I'm sitting here seeing is that, like, now I've got this kayak that weighs so much that it's hard for me to move around,
and you still got to paddle or pedal it.
Well, and like I'm getting to the point with my kayak that I'm like, it's starting to become a non-starter because it's not simple enough. So
you've made it too complicated.
It made it too complicated.
Right.
So it's better off to have that skiff that's set up to do some of those things, and then just have that really simple, super simple kayak. Just throw it in the back of the truck, throw it, one tackle box, one or two rods, and go. And I think that there's a lot of people that appreciate kayaking for that simplicity. But then I want to put my two boys in the boat with me and do a more, a fishing trip, or I want to me and you to go out real quick for an hour and a half or something and get an afternoon fishing trip in, you just need a little skiff.
Yep. Need something a little bit bigger, a little more room to stretch your legs. I mean, you
Yep.
are pretty confined, even with a motor on a kayak. You're confined, as like Peter was saying, 2 to 3 miles usually. I don't know, people do more than that. We're just using generalizations, you know.
Sure. And I mean, no matter what kayak you're on, one wrong move and you're in the water.
Yep.
And with a skiff, you got a little more stability. You know, I mean, you got a 4-year-old on the boat with you.
Right. Don't want to be.
It's going to limit the amount. If you're putting them in a kayak, it will limit where you go and the times that you go more so than it will in a skiff.
Certainly limit your time on the water as well.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Well, that was fun, man. That was a good interview.
It was. Yeah, I like it. Well, I'm going to wrap my report up. Good luck with yours.
Sounds good, brother. We'll talk soon. All right, guys, that wraps up another great segment. Y'all take a minute to check out a few more of this week's sponsors. That segment was brought to you by Kilton's Offshore Charts. The days of heading out and blindly looking for good fishing areas are pretty much over. Don't waste time and money on fuel searching for fish. You need the most recent, highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go. The knowledge provided by today's technology is critical when planning an offshore fishing trip. Make the choice that professional captains all over the Gulf make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. The easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service will have you on the fish every time you go. Check them out at hiltonsoffshore.com. And also brought to you by MB Ranch King. MB Ranch King hunting blinds and feeders are built to last, right here in the USA. With durability and convenience in mind, MB Ranch King's maintenance-free blinds are constructed with high-grade steel and come in a variety of sizes to meet any hunter's needs. They offer high-quality, easy-to-use corn and protein feeders that can be filled with both feet on the ground. Call Kevin today for more info or a quote at 205-807-2937. MB Ranch King, built in the pursuit of perfection. All right, Cap, you know we can't get out of here without doing What Did You Learn? What'd you pick up from the show this week?
Man, I was just thinking about how Captain Patrick mentioned the style of using the slip weight or the egg sinker and kind of letting that bait be able to, your weight go to the bottom and then letting that bait be able to travel and come up to wherever it needs to be and move around and be seen more. Actually you're working all the water column too, and giving it a little bit of slack and letting that fish, your bait do its job. That really stuck out to me because I was pretty hard pressed on if I'm fishing like that, I was going to use my weight to just keep my bait strictly on the bottom, and that's it. And I think
different applications, right? Sometimes you want that and sometimes you want the other.
Right. And that really made me kind of, that's what I picked up on, man, was just the possibilities, you throw when you do that different style, and the bait really kind of works the column for you, does the work for you.
The circle hook does what it's supposed to do.
That's a big thing.
Just start reeling when it gets tight.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. Yeah, I like that too. I like the style of knocker rig. That definitely makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. Well, what did you pick up?
Man, I think I picked up from you talking about nostalgia fishing. Kind of go in depth a little bit more on that. What's your definition of that?
Man,
getting stuck in your ways, going back to that's my spot. That's my spot. That's where I'm going.
That's
because I'm hard headed. I do that. I'm bad about that. Well, we caught them here, 2 weeks ago. It's kind of the same conditions. That's where we're going back to.
Oh man, if I could just count on, or just have $1 for every time I've heard that. Man, we caught them good right here.
Yeah. Where'd they go?
They should be here.
Yep.
Me and Richard were talking about that yesterday, but
that's what I picked up. You got to get out of your own head sometimes. Get out of your own way.
For real. I mean, if you the biggest thing about the fishing with the bad habit is we all have them, obviously, but do we learn from them? And of course, heck, this show kind of sparks that stuff in your brain that you probably wouldn't have thought about, because you do get so set in your ways, And I think the bad habit of fishing with nostalgia is you're not exploring the different ways that you could get hooked up and catch fish, because there's been plenty of times, man, where I've sat somewhere and just fished this way that I caught them 2 days ago, and then I try something different and just start catching them. That's the difference. I mean, if you're able to know that and know the difference, and don't be so don't be so hard pressed and so close-minded on
Tunnel
just,
vision, close minded
yeah.
to go away. I was thinking tunnel vision. Yeah.
Yeah, tunnel vision, man, that explains it perfect, because we'll get set in that light, and mainly because we had success with it in the past.
I know this works.
I know, and not even, obviously there are spots where you fish and there's a good setup for fish to hang out. I get that, but those fish might be a little further back next time, or they might be, there might be a spot you didn't know about. And that's why I actually mentioned earlier on the show, when I was coming up to spots where I've had success.
I actually have that over here written down that I learned as well. Fish your way around and or to your spot, spot.
Maybe maybe don't come in so hot on plane, I mean, if you're fishing deeper water, obviously it's not a big deal, but you're in 10 foot of water or less, that makes a difference if the fish aren't used to that stuff. I've always said that those fish up in the North Shore, all those crabbers that run their pots every day,
they're used to that propeller.
Yeah. I've had customers kind of look at me funny, like, well, this boat's getting really close. And I'm like, man, those fish are used to that boat. And I was like, he ain't hurting.
He's there every day.
Yeah, he's not hurting anything. So definitely, if you're listening, don't get aggravated with those guys in there running those pots, because it's not changing anything.
Yep, that's a great point too.
But as far as the fishing your area that you're kind of coming up to, or maybe you have a spot in mind because the conditions are right, yeah, take that time, take that 20 minutes just to throw a bait over here where you don't usually. Maybe you have some electronics, use that side scan
it for you before you get all up in there.
Yeah, or just if you want to fish that spot and you do well, before you just kind of jet out of there, just kind of turn that side scan on if you have it, or down scan, or whatever, and just kind of look at what you just fished. Yeah. That's another thing too. Yep. If you were successful somewhere, hey, check it out.
Pay attention to why you were successful. Yeah, we say that a lot on here,
and that's gonna.
It makes a difference in catching the fish next time and or that time for sure.
100%. That is a true statement.
All right, guys, that wraps up another great segment. Let's take a quick break. Y'all check out a few of our great sponsors. That segment was brought to you by SunSouth. For quality John Deere equipment affordably priced, visit your neighbors at SunSouth. Visit your local SunSouth and check them out on the web at www.sunsouth.com. And also brought to you by Sam's Bait and Tackle. Sam's Bait and Tackle is your one-stop shop located at 27122 Canal Road in Orange Beach, Alabama. Sam's has a little bit of everything, including a deli, inshore, offshore, and surf fishing tackle. They also have bait, clothing, groceries, name brand sunglasses, and so much more. Sam's also has tackle experts and podcast contributors Chris Veche and Dusty Hayes on hand to answer any questions you may have about any type of local fishing, and can also repair your rods and reels if necessary. Stop by and shop or call them at 251-981-4245 today. And also Advanced Transmission. Give the professionals a call who have been trusted on the Gulf Coast for over 25 years at 251-626-6061, or check them out online at www.advanced-transmission.com. All right, Captain Wesley, I appreciate you co-hosting with me this week.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Butch.
It's good stuff, man. I learned a lot. It was a good inshore segment. Captain Patric, Captain King's been on the fish offshore. It was a great show. Thanks for being a part of it.
Also, it's an honor to be here, man.
Folks want to get up with you and book a trip, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Man, you can just visit my website, baysoundfishing.com. I have a calendar there. You can book on there, or if you want to give me a call, 251-222-0029.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up this week. You guys, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like us to email you the podcast each week, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Again, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you the new show each week. We'll talk to y'all next week. You guys keep whacking them and stay safe out there. This Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report was brought to you by KillerDock. KillerDock uses marine-grade aluminum to make fabulous fish cleaning tables and stunning canopies that will keep us out of the sun. KillerDock combines durability, function, and design to uniquely upgrade your entire dock experience. Visit KillerDock.com to see more. And also brought to you by Foster Contracting, Fortified Roofing Pros. Did you know you could save up to 40% on your homeowner's insurance with a fortified roof? Learn more at fortifiedroofingpros.com or call them at 251-973-9999. And also brought to you by B&M Pole Company is more than just panfish. Check out their Sam's Super Salt series designed for shallow water fishing for trout and redfish at bnmpoles.com. And also brought to you by Photonis Defense. Photonis Defense PD Pro Ultralight Ultra Compact Night Vision Systems. Simply the best in class night vision systems ever built. Contact them at photonisdefense.com to learn more. Photonis Defense, Masters of Darkness.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report brought to you by me, Angelo DePaola, The Coastal Connection. Find us online at thecoastalconnection.com.
And also brought to you by Fishbites. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits as well as tackle at fishbites.com. Also brought to you by Coastal Conservation Association of Alabama. Check them out at ccaalabama.org. And also brought to you by Dixie Supply and Baker Metal Works are proud to be your metal roofing headquarters for over 40 years. Save time and money by buying from the most reliable manufacturer on the Gulf Coast. Buy it today, pick it up today. With the addition of their new store in Cantonment, Florida, they now have 8 locations to serve you. Dixie Supply and Baker Metal Works, your metal roofing headquarters.